people's hardships for the Democrats' political games in Washington. Yesterday, there was a lot said, written about an editorial that was in the Washington Post. I commend it to your reading, if you haven't seen that. But it reads in part just one line out of that. I would like to stand up here and read you the whole thing. The Washington Post, as you know, is not generally on my side. They said, quote, Democrats openly acknowledge that they refuse to do this, reopen the government, because it would mean giving up their leverage. If they persist, it will mean families start to go hungry. Now, look, this isn't some novel idea. As you know, the Democrats have always traditionally said, breathlessly, given speeches passionately saying that you've got to keep the government funded. You should never shut it down. It would be so dangerous. And we've recounted this over and over. I mean, I literally could be here all day reading the Democrats' own past statements on the perils of shutting down the government, but I'm just going to highlight a couple this morning because they're relevant and timely. I'll begin with Senator Coons. He's the senior Democrat senator from Delaware. In 2013, he said this, quote, our democracy cannot function if the majority party threatens to shut down the government unless it gets its way, unquote. And that was Senator Coons in 2013. And what is he saying now? Earlier this week, he said, quote, frankly, this is our only moment of leverage. Quite a switch. Bernie Sanders has got a lot of airtime here lately, and back in 2018, Senator Bernie Sanders said this, quote, the truth is that shutting down the government is a serious and dangerous action that we must do everything possible to prevent. That was in 2018. You know what he said this month? Quote, if we reopen the government, we lose our leverage. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse in 2013, the shutdown was, quote, entirely unnecessary and has harmed our economy and our reputation in the world. But if we also can't forget, we must never again allow extremist hostage-taking to create this kind of disruption. That was 2013. Just days ago, the senator from Rhode Island said the opposite. It's the only lever we have, meaning the shutdown. What he means is that the pain of the American people is their political lever. I guess he's forgotten his cries of alarm over the extremist hostage-taking. And how about the House? Infamously now, we all know, the Democrat whip, Catherine Clark, the second highest ranking Democrat in the House, said, quote, just last year, she said, they are taking a non-issue, a false flag, and saying this is the reason we can't proceed. It is a dangerous precedent to be threatening a shutdown. That's what she said in 2024. Now, what'd she say about a week ago? The opposite, quote, of course, there will be families that are going to suffer here, but it's one of the few leverage times we have. Many House members have echoed the same hypocrisy, and I'm not going to waste our time with it this morning, but I do want to leave you with this quote from Chuck Schumer because he is the actual architect of the shutdown. He is the one that is preventing the Senate Democrats from doing the right thing. In March of this year, as you know, he voted on the same CR to avert a shutdown. And he said then, quote, in his speech on the Senate floor and in a bunch of interviews, this is what he said on the Senate floor, quote, the CR was certainly bad, but a shutdown would be 15 or 20 times worse. It was a vote of principle. And today, Chuck Schumer, entirely void of principle, by his own estimation, said, quote, every day gets better for his party. Tell that to the millions of American families facing a hunger crisis now as a direct result of his failed leadership and shenanigans. Those Democrats have all collectively voted 14 times over the last several weeks to reject the clean continuing resolution to fund the government, and they've made it abundantly clear they're going to continue to do that, to hold the American people hostage, so long as it serves their political interest to look tough to the leftist radicals in their base. Republicans have done our part to end the government, the Democrat shutdown, and now it's time for Democrats to do theirs. The path forward is simple. Please, please, every American who is concerned about this, every American that is feeling the harm, you should call the Senate Democrats and tell them to stop the nonsense. Echo the voices of the unions, of the airlines, of hardworking people everywhere, and tell them to stop doing this and open the government. We have to do that. 42 million Americans are set to miss meals starting tomorrow, and this should be the easiest vote they've ever taken in their lives. I don't want to belabor this point any longer because I'm delighted to introduce you to our guest for the daily press conference here. Everybody knows Brooke Rollins, the incomparable, as I call her, the incomparable Brooke Rollins. She leads the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And, of course, her department operates and oversees SNAP benefits to all these tens of millions of Americans. We're fortunate to have her here today. She's going to talk about the devastating effects of the Democrats' decisions on all this. And I'm delighted to give her the podium now. Brooke, so thanks so much for being here. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mike, Mr. Speaker. Really great to be here with everyone. I was reminded I was in the Speaker's backyard in Louisiana over the weekend and on Friday, and we went to a restaurant there, and our waiter by the name of Joe was wonderful. He was a multi-generational Louisiana, New Orleans, and he was our server, and he was just so impressive. And towards the end, he brought up that, well, this is a job he had to take because he was furloughed and so was not making any money, and he worked for the federal government. He didn't know who I was. And I said, well, Joe, I can appreciate that. You know, I'm sort of in that world as well. And I said, where do you work? And he said, well, I work for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in their New Orleans office as part of the financial team. And so it just really brought home for me, to echo what Mike said, just thanking so many thousands of federal workers who are showing up, who are still doing their job, who aren't getting paid, those that are now concerned about putting food on the table and making their mortgages and paying their rent, but to be out in the country, I was in Indiana yesterday, and understand the real sort of pain that's being felt. But just to echo a couple of the themes that Speaker Johnson talked about, again, the idea that the Democrats have now for 14 different votes voted to keep the government closed is absolutely unconscionable. Every day they hold the federal government hostage. They are leaving millions of families' livelihoods and critical benefits, including SNAP, hanging in the balance. Of course, we all know the 13,000 air traffic controllers working without pay, many turning